I was seated at the kitchen table when Angela entered. Her expression swiftly changed from surprise to annoyance as she processed my presence at 2:30 p.m., a time she likely considered her own. She was, as always, strikingly beautiful, a statuesque 5'9" in professional attire. Her auburn hair brushed her shoulders. Today, she wore a white blouse, a button or two undone, and a black skirt that clung to her hips with a little too much intention for someone returning from work. She wasn't alone. A tall young man followed her, awkwardly trying to remain in her shadow. I noticed Angela subtly reposition herself to shield him, like a magician hoping the audience wouldn't see her manipulating the strings. "Chris," she began, her voice sharp, "what are you doing home?" I tilted my head, feigning consideration of her absurd question. "I live here," I replied. Her irritation, a familiar companion these past few weeks, flared. "Of course you live here. But why are you home at this hour?" I didn't immediately respond. Instead, I let my gaze drift over her and her guest. He clutched a leather briefcase, appearing to wish he were anywhere but there. His nervous posture was a giveaway, but his eyes, particularly his eyes, told me he wasn't foolish. "I suppose I could ask you the same thing," I said, maintaining a neutral tone. "You're home 2.5 hours early." The corners of her mouth twitched, but she quickly masked it. "We came to talk to you," she said carefully. My gaze shifted to her guest. He stepped forward, extending a hand as if at a networking event. "Mr. Carter," he said. "I'm Michael Browner. I'm an attorney at Brackman & Sons, and I've been working closely with Angela over the past few months." I ignored his outstretched hand, letting the silence hang. I wanted them to squirm, and they didn't disappoint. Angela shifted on her heels, and Michael dropped his arm, attempting to conceal his discomfort with a forced smile. Angela's voice, sharp again, cut through the air. "Chris, don't be rude." I offered a thin smile. "I'm sorry. Did I interrupt something?" Michael's eyes darted between Angela and me. This wasn't going as planned, and they both knew it. "Why don't I get us some drinks?" I said abruptly. "Let's move to the living room and talk." Angela looked uncertain. Her calculating mind was clearly working overtime, but Michael, eager to regain control, nodded. "That sounds good." A few minutes later, we were in the living room. Angela and Michael occupied the couch, sitting closer than was appropriate for colleagues. I poured Angela a glass of her favorite Merlot, gave Michael a tulip glass of amber ale, and kept a short pour of bourbon for myself. Raising my glass in a mock toast, I watched Michael attempt polite conversation. "This is a fantastic amber ale," he commented, swirling his glass and examining the bubbles. "One of the most complex I've had. What brewery is this from?" I smirked. "Pabst Blue Ribbon." Angela's eyebrows furrowed, and Michael froze mid-sip. "Chris," she said, exasperated, "you've always said PBR is worse than donkey piss." I didn't bother concealing my grin. And I stand by that. Michael's smile faltered, and Angela lost what little patience she had left. "You're being such an..." she snapped. "We came home to have a calm, mature conversation. But you've been nothing but rude and condescending." "Rude?" I leaned back in my armchair, swirling the bourbon in my glass. Maybe I need to learn from the experts on polite, uplifting conversations, like my ever-faithful wife. I gave her a pointed look, and she had the decency to avert her gaze. Michael decided it was his turn to intervene. "Chris, Mr. Carter," I interrupted, my voice like steel. "When you entered my home, you called me Mr. Carter. Let's stick with that." He flushed, but to his credit, he didn't back down. "Mr. Carter," he began again, "Angela and I came here today to discuss the situation calmly." "The situation," I repeated dryly, swirling my bourbon. "Why don't you enlighten me about the situation?" Michael shifted uncomfortably, but Michael pressed on. "This is just a short-term fling. I regret involving a married woman, and I take full responsibility for my actions. Angela and I agree it doesn't alter the bond you two share. It's temporary." I laughed, genuinely amused by his delivery. He was either the boldest idiot I'd ever met, or a man who seriously overestimated his importance. A fling, huh? I turned to Angela. Is that what you're calling it? She leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees, attempting to appear earnest. Chris, I love you. I don't want a divorce. This thing with Michael, it's nothing, just a mistake, a distraction. My smile faded. A distraction, I repeated coldly. Angela, we've been married for 26 years. We've raised a family, built a life together, and I've loved you truly. But now I discover the woman I've devoted my life to has become this. Angela flinched but held her ground. I've been lonely, Chris. It's not an excuse, but you've been so busy with work. And then with Kelly moving out, Oh, don't start dragging our daughter into this mess, I snapped. This isn't about me being busy or Kelly moving away. This is about you deciding to let some guy sleep with you in our bed because you were bored. Michael tried to interject. Mr. Carter, shut the hell up, I snapped, cutting him off. I'm talking to my wife. Angela tried again. Chris, it's over after this weekend. Michael's new here and he doesn't know many people yet. Once he settles in, he'll find someone else. It's not like this is serious. Her words hung in the air like a knife poised to fall. My fingers tightened around my glass, but my voice remained calm. So, let me get this straight. You're going to New York with him this weekend. You're going to share our special getaway tradition with your fling, then come home on Sunday and pretend everything's fine? Angela hesitated, then nodded. Yes, she said softly, as if doing me a favor. The audacity of it hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I just stared at her, the memories of all our weekends in New York flashing through my mind. The Broadway shows, the concerts, the quiet dinners, all tainted. You've got guts, I finally said, my voice devoid of emotion. I'll give you that. I stood and walked to the sideboard, feigning a refill of my bourbon, though the glass was nearly full. Behind me, I heard their frantic whispering. They probably thought they were being subtle, but every hissed word carried. What's wrong with him? Stay calm. He's just angry. Stick to the plan. Ah, the plan. I had to give them credit for trying. Too bad I was better at this game. When I returned, they were sitting awkwardly apart. Michael clearly regretted his life choices, and Angela clutched her wine glass like a lifeline. I sat back down, taking a slow sip, letting the tension build. Finally, I spoke. Michael, you're an attorney, right? He nodded cautiously. Yes, that's correct. Then let me ask you something. You seem like a sharp guy, probably the brightest bulb in your office. What made you think it was a good idea to start an affair with a married woman whose husband is coincidentally a client of her company? His face paled. I didn't know at first. Angela jumped in. Chris, stop. This isn't fair. I ignored her, focusing on Michael. Did she tell you we have a prenuptial agreement? His brows furrowed. She mentioned it. But those things don't hold up after nearly 3 decades. The language would be outdated. You're wrong, I cut him off. Every 2 years, my legal team reviews our family's documents to ensure compliance with current laws. Your little fling is going to cost Angela dearly. Michael looked at Angela, his confidence visibly cracking. She looked back at me, her mask of control starting to slip. Chris, you don't want to do this, she said, her voice trembling. We've built a life together. We've raised a family. Don't throw it all away over one stupid mistake. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Angela, the only person throwing anything away is you. And as for this being a stupid mistake, well, you didn't seem to think it was so stupid when you were sneaking off to Middlewoods Park for your little picnic rendezvous. Her eyes widened, and Michael froze. That's right, I continued. Someone from your office tipped me off a couple of weeks ago. They sent photos, holding hands, kissing, real cute. Angela's voice wavered. Chris, please, it's not what it looks like. Not what it looks like? I laughed bitterly. Angela, stop. Just stop. You cheated. You lied. And you thought you'd get away with it because you think I'm a fool. But let me assure you, The fool in this room isn't me. Michael tried to recover. Mr. Carter, this doesn't have to get ugly. Angela and I have agreed to end things. Michael, I interrupted. You seem confused about your role here. You're a mistake, a fling, a midlife crisis with a law degree. Nothing more. He opened his mouth to respond, but I held up a finger. Don't just sit there and enjoy your PBR. Let's make this official, I said, grabbing the remote. I turned on the TV, and the screen lit up with a Zoom meeting. Two familiar faces appeared. Peter, our longtime family attorney, and Lou, a divorce attorney I'd hired 2 weeks ago. Peter, Lou, can you hear me? I asked. Loud and clear, Peter said, his voice steady. Angela visibly recoiled. Chris, what is this? This, I said, gesturing to the screen, is the beginning of the end. Lou took over, his tone clipped and professional. Mrs. Carter, I'm representing your husband in your divorce proceedings. Papers were filed this afternoon. You'll be officially served by Monday. The grounds are infidelity, supported by extensive evidence gathered by a private investigator. The prenuptial agreement is fully enforceable. Under its terms, Mr. Carter will retain full ownership of the house, all savings and retirement accounts, and 80% of liquid assets. You'll be left with your personal belongings and 20% of joint cash reserves. Additionally, as of tomorrow morning, your position at the Carter Insurance Brokerage will be terminated. You'll receive severance equivalent to 2 months' salary. Angela gasped. You can't do this. Oh, but I can, I said. Lou added. Mr. Carter has also frozen all joint accounts. You'll need to retain your own attorney moving forward. Angela was shaking now, her eyes wide with disbelief. Chris, you're destroying me. I smiled grimly. No, Angela, you destroyed yourself. Angela, starting to panic, shot to her feet, pointing a trembling finger at the screen. Get them back! I need to ask them questions. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. That's not how this works, Angela. You'll need your own attorney for that. But don't worry, they'll be thrilled to bill you by the hour to explain how thoroughly screwed you are. Michael leaned forward, his voice low and calm, trying to regain control. Angela, sit down. We'll figure this out. Don't let him rattle you. Rattle her? I asked, my grin widening. Oh, we're just getting started. I waved the remote again, bringing up the next Zoom meeting. This time, a stern-faced older man appeared on the screen. Jake, CEO of Angela's company. Jake, can you hear me? I asked casually. Loud and clear, Chris, Jake replied, his tone grim. Angela's face turned ashen. Oh no, Jake, please don't do this. Jake sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Angela, this isn't personal, but your behavior has left me no choice. Effective immediately, your position in Hartford is eliminated. Given your 29 years of service, I'm offering a transfer to our Albany office. You have 1 week to decide, and 30 days to relocate if you accept. Angela sank back into the couch, her body folding in on itself. Please, Jake, she begged. Don't do this to me. I didn't do this to you, Angela. You did, Jake replied coldly before disconnecting. Michael's mask of professionalism finally cracked. He clenched his fists and leaned forward. You're destroying her life, you son of a... I cut him off by raising a hand. Save it. If you think that was harsh, you'll love what's next. The screen changed again, and this time, a striking blonde woman appeared. Her expression was calm but icy, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Dr. Cynthia Browner, I said, tilting my head. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Michael turned ghostly white. Cynthia, wait! Don't bother Michael, Cynthia snapped. I've already filed for divorce. You'll be served within the week. I've also decided not to move to Connecticut after all. The girls and I will stay in Michigan, and I'll keep my position at the hospital. Michael looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Cynthia, it was just a fling. It meant nothing. Please, we can work this out. Her laugh was harsh and bitter. A fling? Oh, is that what you told Angela? I've done some digging, Michael. Turns out this isn't your first time. Alice Packer, Joy Lively, Candy Phillips. Should I keep going? Angela stiffened, her eyes darting to Michael. Wait, who are they? Oh, Angela, Cynthia said with mock pity. You're just one of many. Did he tell you he loved you? That you were special? I've heard it all before. Cynthia, stop! Michael pleaded, his voice cracking. No, Michael, I won't stop. Send me your new address and I'll ship your things. You're not welcome in my home. Goodbye. The screen went dark. Michael stood abruptly, his chest heaving with rage. You've ruined everything, he roared, advancing toward me. I stayed seated, pulling the pistol I'd tucked into the chair cushion, the barrel pointed directly at him. Careful, Michael, I said, my voice dangerously calm. You've got two choices. Sit down and shut up, or leave quietly. But if you take another step, I'll make sure you limp out of here. He froze, his fury giving way to fear. Slowly, he lowered himself back onto the couch, his hands clenched into trembling fists. Angela looked at him, horrified, but said nothing. I let the tension hang for a moment before speaking. I've got one more meeting lined up. This one's special. Angela flinched. Chris, please, no more. I ignored her, hitting the remote one final time. The screen lit up, and the face of our daughter Kelly appeared. Her expression was a mix of sadness and anger. Hi, Dad, she said softly. I love you. I love you too, sweetheart, I replied. Thank you for joining us. Angela bolted upright. Kelly, no. Please, baby, don't do this. Kelly's voice was steady, but her eyes burned with contempt. I've heard everything, Mom. The affair, your plans to run off with Michael. I can't believe how selfish you've become. It's not that simple, Kelly, Angela said, desperation creeping into her voice. You don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, Kelly interrupted. You destroyed Dad. You destroyed our family. And for what? A fling? A little excitement? You disgust me. Angela began to cry, but Kelly wasn't finished. By the way, Mom, Scott and I are having a baby. A girl. She's due in February, but you won't be part of her life. I can't trust you. Goodbye. The screen went black. Angela collapsed into sobs, her mascara smearing down her cheeks. Michael looked like he wanted to vanish into the couch cushions. I stood, tucking the pistol into my waistband. I'm heading out for dinner. When I get back, I expect you to be gone. Angela, pack what you need for a week. Michael, you've got 3 days to leave the state. If I find you here on Monday, things will get unpleasant. I opened the front door, pausing to look back at them one last time. Enjoy your weekend in New York. I hear the weather is going to be beautiful. And with that, I walked out, leaving the shattered remains of their plans behind me.